Make it be a higher purity than we have right now, so we're almost at the level, I believe, where you can use it for landscaping for businesses, but really it's a big push to get it into drinking water, but that's what we need to do.
I touched upon this a little bit before, talking about how we don't have a redundancy in our water quality and rather collecting our water. It's just rainwater, that's what we're using. And I think, the city tried to implement something with collecting rainwater in our home and potentially people using gray water from their home. I remember in the 80s we had a really long drought, and my family was the first to implement utilizing gray water in our yard to keep everything watered. And we had a city staff person come to our house and say, we're in a drought and all of your lawn is green. What are you doing? We're like, we're recycling our water. And I think ultimately what we need to do is look to ourselves to solve certain problems. Infrastructure of our current water system is outdated and it needs to be improved, but that takes millions of dollars. If we can look to each household and the sustainability of new building, we can implement some type of resourceful gray water collection.
So in the years that we have average rainfall, we actually get enough water, which is nice. But with climate change, and all of us have been noticing, that hasn't been happening as often. So the WASAC committee got together, especially when the community was not in favor of desal, and came up with what I think is a really solid plan. And what's exciting is last council meeting, we're going ahead to stage 2 because the recharging the aquifer is showing promise. So that's great news. We are really great as a community. We're, other than San Francisco, we use less water per capita. And believe it or not, the students and the people who live at UCSC use even less water than we do as a city. So luckily, we're really good savers, and I think that's, that's our legacy as a community. I think, though, that we need to continue the process, and then when newer technologies come out, we need to consider them, but there's a lot of cost involved. The devil's in the details, so to speak, but I think we're on the right path.
Well, I don't think we want to wait until we have a drought and figure out what to do. I think we need to keep our water tables up, our groundwater tables, and not deplete them. In order to do that, we should be encouraging and incentivizing in our building codes systems that capture gray water and recycle it, systems that capture runoff water. And those should be part in our green plan and building to incentivize and to have people who are remodeling or building an alternative unit build in systems that protect our water supply, and we should incentivize that. I don't think it's the university that's causing the pollution here, but I do believe we need to move those 10,000 students back up there and let them drink the water that the university has instead of ours, and use water there, and that will help.
So we don't have safe water. It's we have to rely on if it's going to rain or not. But I have to say that last year or the year before, when we were told to conserve our water, we did a great job. We saved so much water, and then we got a double bill. Not okay, but it was what it is. I think that using the gray water, especially if we're going to be building high rises, and if we put in, the green roofs, we're going to need the water. And that is something that could be put in the plan when building some of these buildings. And I agree with Philip. The kids at UC need to stay up at UC. We are struggling to take care of ourselves here in Santa Cruz, and that's just such a big burden on all of us right now. And it would be great if we can figure that out sooner than later.
So we very much need to be concerned about water security, and especially in addition to our drinking water, but also sea level rise, because we're going to have a number of communities within the city that are going to be heavily impacted, which includes the beach flats and lower ocean areas. But when discussing water security in terms of drinking water and water availability, we really need to think about how we can conserve the water that we have. And part of that's going to be going through and starting to look at how we can retrofit a lot of our buildings that were built a long time ago prior to when we had these water issues, to see how we can make those buildings more ecologically sustainable, environmentally sustainable. In addition to that, we also need to think about how we're developing and making sure that those developments additionally are also trying to reduce the amount of water we're consuming. And we need to start thinking about ways that we can recharge our water tables. UCSC just built the Coastal Biology campus, and their parking actually has the capacity for water infiltration. And so we need to start thinking about how our roads and parking lots and ways are designed so that we can get more water back into the water table.
So the last question is pretty critical of the leadership deficit at the council due to transitions, but I think we actually can give some thanks to the council for the work that they enabled a group of citizens to do through the Water Safety and Security Advisory Committee, where they came up with a reasonable plan that still has a couple more years to run out to see if it's going to work. First, they're looking at water banking as our primary solution. Second, we're looking at water recycling as the second solution. And only if everything else fails will desal come back on the table. But all of that is predicated on the city continuing to lead the charge in water use reduction and conservation, going beyond the state codes that are getting stronger and stronger in terms of gray water reuse and water recycling systems. So I did want to just highlight, I think water security isn't assured, it's a statewide problem. But we have a plan, we need to let it run out, and the council made the right decision a couple of years ago.
So a lot of these issues all fall back to having people in a position of elected leadership that are willing to kind of change the narrative, like I mentioned before. And as Dr. King called it, a revolution of values. Because we need to start looking at the ways not only that we capture our water and redistribute our water, like for example, if we were to capture more water and then put it out onto the ground and topsoil of Scotts Valley, then we can have natural water infiltration into our aquifers there. But also in partnerships with other cities, like for example, the negotiation that seems to be on hold between Santa Cruz and SoCal with figuring out how we can share water and bolster each other's water security by adding additional or larger pipe systems that run between Santa Cruz and SoCal. It's important that we protect our water aquifers in general because they are where we get our water from if we're in a drought. And SoCal is unfortunately already facing the threat, very real threat of saltwater intrusion into their aquifers. And as soon as that happens, then those aquifers are gone forever. So it's important that we work together across municipalities to make sure that we have the resources that we need.
So we get our water from 4 places. We get it from 4 streams. 3 are on the north coast, 1 is the San Lorenzo River. The 5th source we get is from the Bells Wells that is in an already overdrafted seawater intruted aquifer. So it's not that the seawater is getting it there, it's already there. So there's a couple things we're working on which are actually very, very revolutionary. And also I should mention that we also have a water storage problem. We have one of the smallest reservoirs in California, Loch Lomond. It's not going to change. We're not going to get permits to change that. So we have a storage problem, and then we have opportunity to share water. Those pipes are already built. They're in place. We're sharing water. We're testing that right now. Secondly, recycled water is now legal in California. It was not legal when the desal project was proposed. So this is a revolutionary new thing that we can access as a community. So we need to look at furthering our conservation, staying on track with that, recycled water, and then we need to get the aquifer recharge and trading system in place.
Thank you. We are now going to move into our rapid fire round. How are decisions driven in the city? There is wide perception among city residents that developers and staff lead development in Santa Cruz. What will you do to give community involvement more of a voice in how our city grows, what it looks like, and who it serves?
Well, first of all, I'd spend a lot more time out in the neighborhoods and less time at City Hall. I think that our job as council people is to set policy and to listen to our neighborhoods and our businesses and try to be your voice back down at City Hall. We set policy, and we should be working closely with staff to make sure that they're not driving our city and that they're not driving the things like development and other parts of what goes on in our city without our residents knowing it. So I would start basically with being much more out into the community, out in our neighborhoods. I think the transparency level of the city has fallen significantly. I'm sure many of you have been on the website. I can't stand it. I can't find anything on it. But I'd like to see a lot more outward information coming out into the community, using different tools, and making sure that our community understands what's happening daily or weekly.
Well, I think you're talking about money. That's what your question is about, and who's driving it. And I think that when you have developers who can make so much from housing right now, you know that some of those decisions are being handled behind closed doors. I think that, you know, the job of a council member really is to go and listen and meet people, as I've been doing since July, knocking and talking to neighbors, finding out what's really going on in terms of how things look to you when you look out your door in the morning or when you read the newspaper, if it really feels like it's representing where you are with your family, if your values are being actually represented by the current council. And I think one of the things that we need to do is do something like office hours, have a regular time of checking in. This is beautiful space to meet in. Why not do it once a month with community members who want to talk? And I think the truth is the council members are supposed to listen and turn your hopes and dreams into policy, and that's how it's supposed to go. It's supposed to go from the bottom up, not the top down.
I know the question was about, you know, community involvement, decisions being made for development. But I think a topic that would roll nicely into this is district elections. There is a topic on the table right now that a committee is going to be reviewing if Santa Cruz would benefit from having district elections. And essentially, each area would have a representative. And I believe that this would help. Now, the research and the consulting still has to take place, but just from a quick glance, having each area, west side, east side, lower west side, upper west side, having these areas represented with one person would allow the neighborhoods to come together and know that they had a representative on council that could hear their concerns, what works, what doesn't work, and really lead and be the leader for them on council. Because I think a lot of times we all get busy in our lives and it's hard to reach out to our representatives. This might help.
So I've actually had the job of council member for the past 4 years, and what I've discovered is it's really a balancing act. And so many times people will approach me and say, well, nobody I know likes X project. But a lot of times that person who's telling me, I don't like this particular project, I've received 20 or 25 other letters from people saying they do like the project. And so we tend to all hang out in our own echo chamber, and so we tend to think that you know, everyone's thinking the way we are, so how could a council member vote differently than we do? But I kind of liken the council members kind of in the middle of an eye of a storm, and all of this information is coming at us. It's coming from staff, it's coming from the community, it's coming from people involved in whatever proposal is coming forward to us. And I think the best thing that a council member can do is to take in all that information and then come up with the best decision that they can. And that's how I've tried to make decisions on the council. Sometimes they're not votes I like to take, but that's the reality of the job.
I think the question has a statement in it too, and it is that staff and developers may be running the show instead of the actual design and zoning. And I just want to share with you some of the things that we were given here. One goal was to build an environment in harmony with its natural setting. That's one of the things they're supposed to be designing by. Another one was that high quality design that reinforces the community's unique character. I don't think that's what they're doing down there. And I think there needs to be some changes on the planning commission. And I would like to see people that look like you on the planning commission, who are activists, who come out on a Friday night, very concerned about what their community, what things look like, how they're being built, how they're being designed, and are you following your own rules? And I think that we'll benefit if we change the nature of the planning commission. There's some good commissioners on there, some that are not so good.
So, as I'm sitting here listening to all the answers, I'm wondering why we don't have more developers and more builders who actually live here that are helping us do these designs. Because I know that a lot of them have it on the side of their trucks. San Jose, Walnut Creek, Concord. So how can those guys figure out what we want? They don't. They live in a whole different world than we do. So I think that maybe if we are working with our people here, we might be able to get what we want. We as a whole community, because everybody has ideas and eventually somebody's going to go, that's the perfect one. So I think if we can keep that more in line with what we have here, then we have builders and we have people who know what we like, what we want, what we need. And keeping that money here in Santa Cruz won't help, not one bit.
So I very much believe that we need to take the community's voice into opinion, and we really need to think about the values that we have in Santa Cruz. We care about people, we care about our environment, we care about the integrity of our neighborhoods. And I feel like when we have a staff that is being driven by developers that's not taking into account what are the needs of the people who live within the community, then we need to start thinking about what are the priorities of that staff. I think that we need to hold the city staff accountable, and I feel like with my background in having a PhD in ecology, one of the things I really like to look at is the data that the staff is producing. If I hear that it doesn't pencil out, I want to see the numbers. And I think that we need to critically look at the information, because if there's information missing from the decisions that are taking place that are going to drive development within our community, then I think that we need to really consider who is actually informing us and who's informing the development of our communities. So I think that one of the things that we definitely need is transparency on our council and provide opportunities for you to voice your opinion and be included in the conversation.
Besides the issues I'm passionate about that I talked about in my opening question, the main reason I'm running is because I think our city council is just suffering a real lack of leadership. And that's not a problem of staff, that's a problem of the council not doing its job. Unfortunately, we've had 4 council members who, for a variety of reasons, have each chosen to serve one term. Micah Posner, Hillary Bryant, Pamela Comstock, and now Cynthia Chase. All for legitimate, reasonable reasons. But we've lost that continuity of leadership that's absolutely essential to have a council that's running the show. That's what we need, is a council that's seasoned, experienced, and ready to get up there to take action to provide the direction to staff, not vice versa. That's how we get development that we want. That's how we engage the neighborhoods in decision-making. That's how we make sure we're balancing transportation and housing downtown, is to make sure the council's in charge.
So I'm a community organizer. It's what I do for work. It's something I've been doing for the last 7 years in Santa Cruz. And it has shown me the power that exists within community, the knowledge that exists within community, and the severe lack of engagement that the city council has made in reaching out to engage community about their issues and things they want to see happen. Instead, I've seen a very heavy preference towards staff decisions, even when it doesn't benefit the community. And it leaves me staggered to try to figure out the logic around that. I think it's absolutely correct that the leadership on the council has been lacking tremendously with regards to being strong in their stance against developers, regardless of what the staff says. One of the answers that we heard earlier was if they would ask developers. We're not there to ask developers, we're there to demand what we need for the city to be able to exist and move forward, essentially. But to do that, we need a mentality shift on the council and change the narrative away from it being profit over people and put it so that people are over profit, so that we're doing things that are better for the community in the long run instead of just for immediate profit.